else untangled string lights and argued about ornament placement. The candles burned low in their holders. Holiday music played from somewhere in the next room at a volume nobody had thought to lower. My sister straightened her blazer with the kind of slow deliberateness that people use when they have rehearsed. She picked up her wine glass, let the room settle, and thanked our parents for trusting her with the future of the company. Then she turned toward me and said, with a smile that arrived and departed in the same breath, that my role had run its course. I felt cold move through me, and it had nothing to do with the weather outside. Betrayal does not knock. It walks in through familiar doors wearing familiar faces and sits down at the table like it was invited. I had built that catering and events business from a single rented commercial kitchen in a strip mall, working through summers and every holiday season, running every client, booking myself while my sister was changing majors and borrowing money I never asked back. And now she stood at the head of the table with the posture of someone who had rehearsed this scene more than once. I thought of my first big corporate event. 300 guests, a sous chef who quit 2 hours before service, me standing alone in a walk-in cooler steadying my breath before going back out to the floor. I thought of the health inspections, the supplier negotiations, the 2 employees I kept on payroll through a slow winter by cutting my own salary in half so theirs would clear on time. My mother adjusted her napkin. My father studied his plate. Neither of them looked at me when my sister said I was getting nothing. My sister kept talking. She said our parents had decided the business needed real direction, that sentiment could not run a company, and that she was positioned to take it further than I ever could. The room thinned the way rooms do when something wrong happens in slow motion, and everyone feels it. But nobody speaks first. My uncle shifted in his chair. My cousin stared at the centerpiece. A younger relative across the table froze with her fork halfway to her mouth. Because family dinners have a way of becoming trials, and everyone at that table could feel the verdict forming in the air. I set my fork down without a sound. I reached for my glass. I took one slow sip and felt the cold crystal steady against my lip, the way that walk-in cooler had steadied me years before. Because I had been holding something back for 3 weeks. Something I had gathered page by page from the moment I realized what they were planning. It was still sitting in the bag I had brought in and left by the door without explaining why. My sister had just finished telling 30 relatives that I would be stepping back, that it was better for everyone, that the company needed fresh leadership with actual vision. So I looked at my father across the table and I asked him, quietly and directly, whether he wanted to say something first or if I should go ahead. The question broke whatever spell the speech had been casting. My sister stopped mid-breath. My father's jaw moved without producing words. My mother looked up for the first time all evening. The room understood that something had just shifted, that the script my sister had been reading from was not the only one present. My father managed something about family and process, and not doing this here, and I told him, still calm, still seated, that they had chosen here when my sister made that announcement. So here was exactly where we were going to be. The room leaned in. Even the candles seemed to hold still. I did not raise my voice. I had learned a long time ago. That volume is what people reach for when they have nothing stronger. I had something stronger. I told the table that the business had been mine legally since its founding, that I was the sole registered owner, and that any transfer of ownership, without my written consent, was not only invalid, but the subject of a conversation I had already started with an attorney. My sister laughed first. She said I was being dramatic, that the paperwork was just a formality, that our parents had every right to restructure what they helped build. And I asked her to define restructure. She did not answer. My father tried again, saying this was not the time or the place. And I told him I agreed. It had not been the time 3 weeks ago either, when they tried to do it while I was away finalizing our biggest contract of the year. The table went very still. My uncle leaned forward. A cousin 2 seats down put her fork down for the first time since we sat. I stood, walked to the entryway, picked up my bag, and came back to the table. I set it down without drama and removed a folder I had put together with the care of someone who understood it might matter in a room exactly like this one. Inside were the original LLC filing with my name listed as sole member, 3 years of bank statements in my name alone, and a chain of emails, the most recent dated 11 days earlier, in which my father explicitly acknowledged that I had not been consulted about the transition. I placed them flat on the table in front of him. I told him he could read them there or have his attorney look them over on Monday. But everyone at that table was going to understand what had actually happened. My sister reached for one of the pages and I moved it aside, telling her it was not addressed to her. My mother said my name in the voice she uses when she wants me to stop, the one meant to signal I was embarrassing the family. I told her gently and clearly that I had not embarrassed anyone. My father went through the papers slowly. His reading glasses fogged slightly in the warm room. His shoulders dropped by degrees as he moved from page to page. My sister switched tactics then, saying she had been told the transition was already agreed upon, that she had not known every detail, that she had just trusted what our parents arranged. And maybe some part of that was even true. But I reminded her that she had stood up at this table and told every person in this room that my role had run its course. So she had known enough. My uncle asked to see the email chain. He read it without comment, set it back down, and looked at my father with the particular quiet of a man deciding what to say to his brother. Someone across the table murmured that this was a serious legal problem. Someone else said my name was something that sounded like concern for the first time all evening. I felt no satisfaction in any of it, only the clean, grounded feeling of a story finally being told with accurate words. The argument broke open after that. My sister said she had been misled. My mother said she only ever wanted peace. My father said he assumed I would eventually come around, that it was simply easier this way, that he did not think I would push back. And that last part landed the hardest of all, because it told me everything I needed to know. They had counted on me being the one who absorbed the decision and said nothing, the one who kept the family intact by agreeing to whatever they arranged while she was at the table eating. My uncle cut through the noise eventually, telling the room that what my father had just admitted was not a small thing, and that what they had attempted had a name that no one at this dinner should be comfortable with. The table went quiet again, but it was a different kind of quiet from before. Not the silence of shock, the silence that follows when accountability arrives, and no one can argue with it anymore. My father said the business was mine, that no transfer had gone through, that he had made a serious error in judgment and a worse one in character. I thanked him for saying it out loud. I meant that, and then I collected my folder, put on my coat, and told everyone I hoped the rest of the evening was warm for them. I drove home in the dark with the heater on and the radio off. The weeks after were exactly what I expected. Messages that began as accusations and softened slowly into apologies. A call from my sister that lasted 40 minutes and resolved nothing of substance. Silence from my father that stretched longer than either of us addressed. But the outcome held. The business stayed mine. The transition my parents had drawn up fell apart under the weight of its own paperwork the moment an attorney reviewed it. My sister found her own direction eventually, without using mine as a bridge to stand on. I do not carry anger about any of it anymore. What I carry instead is a clearer understanding of what I am willing to accept in the name of family and what I am not. Because loyalty is not the same as compliance. And maintaining peace at a dinner table is not the same as letting someone rewrite your life in the time it takes to make a toast and sit back down. When people ask if I regret walking out of that Christmas dinner, I tell them the only thing I regret is not walking out sooner. Not in anger, in understanding. That folder sat in my bag for 3 weeks while I hoped it would not be needed. It was always going to be needed. Some conversations only happen when you decide to make them happen, and no amount of hoping will substitute for that. Now every December, when cinnamon and roasted ham fill a room and string lights flicker across a ceiling, I do not tighten anymore. I think of the table, the papers laid flat, the calm way I asked my father whether he wanted to speak first. And I think about how that one question changed the entire shape of my life going forward. It told me what I was made of. It told me what I would and would not allow. If you have ever been underestimated by the people who were supposed to champion you, if you have ever watched someone receive credit for something you sacrificed to build, if you have ever been told to stay quiet because peace mattered more than truth, then this channel is for you. Subscribe now, because more stories are coming, and every one of them is about people who refuse to disappear.